this right here, 26 and 27.
Why don't
That's
you
enough.
like?
That's enough for me.
Why don't you like having woman as the apex of creation? Because it can be misused to protect you.
No, I just think it's not fair.
It's unbalanced.
Right? It's not.
You know, I never hear of any man complaining about it. Have you ever heard of a man saying, "Oh, this isn't fair that women are the apex of creation"?
Right, because they use this as a way to keep women out of Torah study or to keep women, in certain places. It's an excuse. I think it's something that people don't really believe. I mean, why else do you say, thank God for not making me a woman? I mean, why?
Because we have mitzvot to perform and you don't, because you're supposed to be busy having babies.
Right.
I like this foot.
But
I'm not so sure about childbirth.
Yeah.
So,
Can I try about that? I'm okay, I'll pass.
So speaking of childbirth, I'm really jumping ahead.
Yeah, I'm not done with 26. I'm not
Okay,
done with 26.
okay.
Okay, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness.
Uh-huh.
So, if Rashi's correct, and there was one dual-gendered being, if that dual-gendered being is made in the likeness of the creator of, quote-unquote, our likeness, does that mean that God, or what we call God, is a dual-gendered entity?
God doesn't have gender.
Well, maybe he does. But we're made in his likeness. If he doesn't, then we don't, right?
Maybe the
Let us
likeness
make
isn't
humankind in our
referring to
image.
gender.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
well,
Like,
In our
Do you
image,
think
according
God
to
has
our
a-
likeness.
do you think God
Likeness is
has
appearance.
do you think God has a penis?
I
What?
don't know.
Well, that's just what you're saying. I'm just translating it so the goyim out there can
I
understand.
don't know. I don't know. That's like asking me if my dad has one. I don't want to talk about that. Yeah, I don't know. It may not have anything to do with that. But what does it have to do with that? According to our likeness.
You just pointed that like God in this story isn't out having sex, because like in the Greek stories, God's out there.
There's no indication of that here.
There's no God having sex in the
It doesn't.
Bible,
It doesn't then say, and
are you
they
talking about
will.
Zeus and
Yeah,
guys
I
like
mean,
that?
yeah. God's in the Greek
I don't
pantheon
think
have a lot of sex.
this God is doing that, and it doesn't say that they will do as we do too. I mean, it stops there. I mean, it's just a likeness.
I mean, it sort of makes sense if you think about how reproduction, procreation occurs with living beings on Earth. You need one of each, So it might just be sort of a metaphor for that. That, again, it's sort of a balance thing where you need both to achieve the final aim of filling and mastering, both sort of energies.
So who is God talking to when he says, let us?
Well, he could be schizophrenic. He could be. I don't know. I mean,
Well, who is
that's
he
the
talking
question.
to?
We don't know.
I think that there's only one explanation that makes sense, and that's God's talking to the animals, and that the human beings are created in both the divine and the animalistic image.
Well, who's he talking to?
Okay, that's an interesting. I can see
Earlier
that.
in when he's saying, God said, God said.
Well,
There's no
I don't know
animals
who
yet.
he's talking to, but now he's saying, let us.
You
Yeah,
think
this is the
he's
first
referring
time.
to?
Yeah.
I'm saying that's the only explanation that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it is the first time he references actually speaking to
He's talking
another
to the animal,
being.
the menagerie.
Maybe it's God the
Maybe.
Father talking to God the Son and God the Holy Spirit.
Well, see, that's what the Christian would say. Christians would say. They would say it's Jesus. He's talking to Jesus. Duh.
Yeah.
Jesus wasn't born yet.
He was hanging out in heaven with God. He just hadn't come down to earth yet.
And
He's still a little
humbled
angel.
himself
Maybe.
to make himself known.
The Word had not yet become flesh.
Exactly.
So, did we cover what you wanted to talk about when you were saying, speaking of...
No, I want to talk about childbirth. How do you, because you ladies both don't seem real up on childbirth, and so how do you feel about God? I'm jumping way ahead here, but because you ladies brought up childbirth, to the woman God said, I will increase greatly your suffering and your childbearing. In pain shall you bear children, yet your craving shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you.
Okay.
How do you like that, ladies?
I think, okay, the Hebrew Bible is prophetic. This is what I've learned anyway. The Hebrew Bible is prophetic. It is not apocalyptic, okay? And that means that it's not foretelling the future. No, it is foretelling the future. It's not, God's not saying, this is how I want things to be, so I'm going to make them so.
Right, right.
It's a prophetic moment. He's basically saying, this is what's going to happen.
This is the consequence.
Men are going to do this to you.
Right, right.
That doesn't mean I want it or think it's a good thing.
Right, right.
This is just what's going to happen.
Because he's laying out the consequences. Because
Right.
you chose.
He's not causing it.
Right.
He's not.
Punishing.
Right.
This is the consequence.
He's not. There's no judgment here.
Right.
I don't think he's saying I think a man should rule over a woman.
Right.
He's saying this is what's going to happen.
Right. And I mean, this is pretty accurate.
It's all...
I mean,
Yeah.
this is what
Pretty
happened.
accurate.
You guys do suffer in childbearing. In pain, you do bear children.
And I think...
Your
many-
craving is for your husband, and he rules over you.
Well,
Just look at
I don't know
Helen
if
and
that's
and her husband. He rules her with an iron fist.
True.
Yet her craving is for him.
Yeah, the final part of that is also prophetic for, I think, many of us here on earth.
Which part?
Mhm.
By the sweat of your brow shall you get
Yeah,
bread
that's
to
the
eat,
man.
so you return to the ground. Yeah, that's the man, but that's really... I really relate to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Until you return to the ground, for from it you are taken, dust you are, dust you shall return to dust.
Women wanted to enter the workforce, and so now they inherit both ends of the
Right.
curse.
We chose that.
Stupid.
Doubly
We
cursed.
should have just stayed home.
Lucky us.
So, what do you think of their choice to eat of the tree of knowledge?
Well, what we see playing out is basically everybody. I mean, this is the dominant theme throughout Genesis. Nobody takes responsibilities for their actions, right? Eve blames.
Right.
Adam blames. The snake blames, or the serpent. Everybody blames. You know, their children are going to blame each other.
Right.
You know, Cain's going to say, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Right? Nobody is responsible, and that's what continues this really destructive cycle, is a lack of ethical responsibility. And I think that's what we're supposed to see in the story, not, oh, look how terrible that woman is. She gave her husband the fruit. You know, she's evil. I mean, it's the ways in which every single living being denies responsibility
Mm-hmm.
in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, just as relevant a theme today. Maybe even more relevant today.
So, if you were stuck in a garden and said you could eat everything here and you can have a nice life, just leave this one tree alone, what would you do?
I'd probably leave it alone for a good long time.
For a while,
I
anyway.
mean, if it was a great garden,
And what if the serpent came to you and said, right, so what did the serpent say
I do like
to
reptiles.
I'm sorry?
I do like reptiles.
3-1.
Yeah, so the serpent says to you, Helen, did perhaps God say you shall not eat of any tree of the garden? And you say, of the fruit of any tree of the garden we may eat, of the fruit of the tree which is in the center of the garden, God says, you shall neither eat it nor touch it, lest you die.
But that's not actually what God said,
Right.
right?
God
He just
didn't
said,
say, you can touch it all you like. Nothing.
don't eat it, right?
Hang a
Right.
hammock from it.
So she's kind of,
She's adding to
yeah, this is where she adds to it.
But then the serpent says to you, you won't die, Monica.
Right.
God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. It will be like you'll have a PhD.